A servant girl looks at him across the firelight and says, "You were with Jesus." Peter, Jesus' disciple, answers fast, "I don't know what you mean." Someone else steps closer. "You're one of them." "I'm not." A third voice, sharper now, "Your accent gives you away." And Peter snaps. He denies Jesus 3 times. Then a rooster crows. This is the man Jesus renamed Peter. Rock, welcome to Bible in Focus. This is the Misfit 12, the disciples unfiltered. Today, Peter, the rock who sank. Before Peter was a legend, he was Simon, a fisherman in Galilee, quick, rough, reactive. A man who knew storms and didn't think he needed saving. Then Jesus steps into Simon's boat, teaches the crowds, and turns to him with a command that sounds almost insulting to a professional. Put out into the deep. Simon's been fishing all night. Nothing. But he says, "Because you say so, I will." Minutes later, the nets are tearing. The boat is dipping under the weight, and the fisherman who thought he understood the sea realizes he's standing in front of someone who commands it. He falls apart in one sentence, "Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man." That's Simon's reflex with holiness, create distance, but Jesus does the opposite. "Don't be afraid, follow me." And here's the wild part, Jesus gives him a new name before he earns it. Not rock because he's steady, but rock because Jesus is already looking at what grace will build. Peter is always first to speak, first to promise, first to swing, first to stumble. He'll confess Jesus as the Christ, then try to correct Jesus when the cross enters the conversation, because Peter wants a Messiah who wins the way the world wins. Jesus rebukes him hard. "Get behind me, Satan." Those words land like a hammer, but Jesus doesn't walk away. He keeps Peter in the circle. Because Jesus knows something Peter doesn't yet understand. Failure isn't the end of the call. Then comes the night on the sea. The wind is violent. The boat is fighting for its life. And Jesus comes toward them, walking on the water. The disciples think it's a ghost. But Peter, impulsive, impossible Peter, says, "If it's you, call me." Jesus says, "Come." Peter steps out. For a moment, the impossible holds him up. His feet are on the waves. His eyes are on Jesus. Then Peter looks at the wind, and he starts to sink. He doesn't pray something polished. He shouts, "Lord, save me." And Jesus grabs him. Not after Peter proves himself. Not after Peter calms down. Jesus grabs him while he's going under. If you want Peter's whole story in one scene, it's that. Bold faith, broken focus, and a hand that refuses to let go. But Peter's worst moment isn't on the waves. It's by a charcoal fire. At the Last Supper, Peter tells Jesus, "Even if everyone falls away, I won't." Jesus tells him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter argues, because Peter always thinks he's the exception. "Even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you." Hours later, Jesus is arrested, and Peter follows, at a distance. That distance is the problem. Close enough to see, too far to be seen with him. And then the questions start. A servant girl by the fire, a man in the courtyard, another bystander listening to his accent. "Aren't you with him?" "I don't know him." "Aren't you one of his disciples?" "I'm not." The third time, Peter breaks. He curses, he swears. "I don't know the man." The rooster crows. And Jesus turns and looks at him, not with shock, not with disgust, with the look of someone who knew and still chose him. Peter runs out and weeps bitterly. So what happens after a failure like that? Peter does what we do. He goes back to what he knows, back to fishing, back to the old life that doesn't ask him to be brave. "I'm going fishing," he tells the others, and they follow him back to the boats, back to the nets, back to the night. They catch nothing. At dawn, a figure stands on the shore. "Throw your net on the right side." They do. The net fills. And John says it first. It's the Lord. Peter doesn't wait for the boat. He jumps into the water and swims to Jesus. There's a charcoal fire burning again. Breakfast is cooking, and Jesus doesn't start with punishment. He starts with a question. "Peter, do you love me?" 3 times. Not because Jesus needs the information, because Peter needs the healing. Because love has to be rebuilt where trust collapsed. Each time Peter says yes, Each time Jesus responds with a mission: feed my lambs, take care of my sheep, feed my sheep. Jesus doesn't just forgive Peter. He entrusts Peter. He hands him the keys. He makes him the foundation. Because when the Spirit comes in Acts, Peter, the man who folded under a servant girl's question, stands up in front of crowds and speaks the name he was afraid to speak. 3,000 people believe. No hiding, no hedging. That's what grace does. It doesn't erase your story. It redeems it. It takes the place you fell and turns it into the place you stand. Scripture shows Peter leading, learning, stumbling, growing. And later, Christian tradition says he died for his faith in Rome, crucified upside down because he didn't consider himself worthy to die like Jesus. However the final scene played out, the truth remains. Jesus built a foundation piece of the early church out of a man who sank and a man who denied. So let me ask you something. Where are you following at a distance right now? What fire are you warming your hands by, pretending you don't know him? Peter is proof that Jesus doesn't call the flawless. He calls the willing, and when you start to sink, he still reaches. This is the Misfit 12, the Disciples Unfiltered. Subscribe to Bible in Focus, and I'll see you in the next story.